Ha ha. Your black card is fake. Georgia Crawford tossed the matte black Centurion card across the desk like it was garbage. It spun twice before stopping in front of the man she'd just called a scammer. She didn't know his name, didn't ask, didn't care. What she saw was a black man in a simple blazer who had no business standing in her luxury showroom. What she missed, the $8.7 billion empire behind him. The $2.3 billion contract in his portfolio. The power to end her career with a single phone call. In 18 minutes, she gave him the answer he needed. By the time she Googled his name, it was already over. This is the most expensive laugh in corporate history. Comment your city below. Let's see how far this story travels. The silver Tesla pulled into Premier Auto Group's parking lot at exactly 2:47 p.m. Marcus Lawson didn't get out immediately. He sat behind the wheel watching. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see everything. A salesman in an expensive suit practically sprinted toward an older white couple near the entrance. Another hovered around a man examining a black SUV, nodding at everything the customer said like his life depended on it. That's how you treat money, Marcus thought. That's how you treat people you think matter. His phone buzzed. A text from Cassandra, his COO. Legal is ready. Board expects signature by Friday. Everything good on your end. Marcus typed back, about to find out. He slipped the phone into his blazer pocket and stepped out of the car. The Texas sun hit him immediately, that dry, relentless heat that made everything shimmer. He'd driven 3 hours from Houston for this. Not because he had to, because he wanted to see for himself. Renata, his procurement director, had done the numbers. 3 months of analysis. Every spreadsheet, every projection, every logistical calculation pointed to the same conclusion. Premier Auto Group was the right partner for Lawson Tech's fleet expansion. 380 vehicles, 16 countries, $2.3 billion over 5 years. The largest corporate fleet deal in Premier Auto's 95-year history. Everything looked perfect on paper, but Marcus hadn't built an $8.7 billion company by trusting paper. He'd built it by trusting people, by reading them, by understanding that what someone says in a boardroom means nothing compared to how they act when they think nobody important is watching. That's why he was here. Not as Marcus Lawson, CEO of Lawson Tech Solutions. Not as the man whose face had been on the cover of Forbes twice in 3 years. Just as a customer. A black man walking into a luxury car dealership on a Tuesday afternoon. The automatic doors whispered open. Cool air hit his face. The smell of leather and new rubber filled his lungs. The showroom stretched out before him. Vehicles positioned like sculptures, each one spotlit and gleaming. A red sports car sat on a rotating platform near the entrance. Black SUVs lined the far wall, and behind glass partitions at the back, he could see the private showcase, the high-end models that required appointments and background checks just to look at. 3 salespeople stood clustered near the service desk, laughing at something on a phone screen. A 4th leaned against a desk nearby, scrolling through her tablet. Nobody looked up. Marcus walked deeper into the showroom. His footsteps echoed against the polished concrete floor. He passed a young couple being shown financing options. Past a salesman explaining trunk space to a woman with 2 kids pulling at her arms. Still, nobody approached him. He stopped near a silver sedan, close enough to the main floor that anyone paying attention would notice, close enough that ignoring him would be a choice. He waited. 1 minute passed. He pulled out his phone, checked his messages. Cassandra had sent the final contract revisions. Legal had approved everything. The board was expecting his signature in 3 days. Everything was ready to move forward. Everything except this. Marcus glanced toward the luxury section. A woman in a dark blazer stood behind a desk examining something on her computer. Her nameplate caught the light. Georgia Crawford, Senior Sales Manager. She looked up. Their eyes met, and Marcus watched her expression change. Not toward interest, not toward customer service, toward something else entirely. Calculation. Judgment. Dismissal. She grabbed a clipboard and started walking in his direction. But her body language told him everything he needed to know. This wasn't someone greeting a potential client. This was someone preparing to handle a problem. Marcus set his phone down and waited. The evaluation had officially begun. Georgia Crawford had been selling luxury vehicles for 17 years. 17 years of reading customers the moment they walked through the door. 17 years of knowing exactly who belonged and who didn't. She could spot a real buyer in 10 seconds flat. The way they walked, what they touched first, how long they lingered, how they held themselves. Real money moved with purpose. Real buyers asked specific questions. Real customers didn't wander around looking lost. This man standing by the silver sedan. He had that look. The one that meant he'd wandered in off the street. Probably saw the cars through the window and got curious. Probably wanted to sit in something expensive and take a picture for Instagram. Georgia had dealt with this exact situation maybe 300 times in her career. People who couldn't afford an oil change walking through her showroom like they owned the place. Wasting time she could be spending on actual commission. Last week it was some kid in a Supreme hoodie asking about a Bentley. Before that, a guy who wanted to just sit in a Maserati for his social media. The week before that, a woman who spent 45 minutes asking questions about a Range Rover before admitting she was just looking. Just looking. The two words Georgia hated most in the English language. She'd learned to handle these situations efficiently, polite enough to avoid complaints, firm enough to move them along before they wasted too much of her day. She checked her watch. 2:52 p.m. Her real appointment was at 3:30. A tech executive from Austin looking to upgrade his wife's Range Rover. That was a guaranteed sale. That was worth her time. This wasn't. Georgia grabbed her tablet and walked over. She didn't smile, didn't extend her hand, just stood there with the tablet against her chest, like a shield keeping professional distance. "Can I help you find something?" The man looked up from his phone. His expression was calm, controlled. That irritated her more than she expected. "Yes," he said. "I'm interested in your executive fleet program." Georgia almost laughed out loud. Fleet program. She glanced past him, checking if maybe he was with someone else, a business partner parking the car, an assistant carrying paperwork. Someone who might explain why this man thought he belonged in a conversation about fleet sales. Nobody. Just him. Alone. Fleet program, she repeated, letting the words hang in the air between them. That's commercial sales. Different department entirely. I'm aware. His voice was steady, professional, like he'd rehearsed this. I was told to ask for the luxury fleet manager. According to your website, that's you. Something about his tone set her teeth on edge. The confidence, the way he stood there like he had every right to her time, like he was somebody. Georgia had seen this before. People who read a few articles online and suddenly thought they understood how the business worked. People who watched too many YouTube videos about acting rich and thought they could fake their way into belonging. Yeah, that's me, she said, tapping her tablet twice against her palm. Fleet sales start at 25 units minimum, enterprise clients only. We're talking established corporations with verified credit lines and purchasing departments. She looked at him directly now. Let him understand what she was really saying. Maybe you're thinking of our certified pre-owned lot. That's across the street. They handle individual sales financing options, stuff like that. The man didn't move, didn't blink, just kept looking at her with those steady, unreadable eyes. I'm thinking of 380 vehicles, he said quietly. Mixed luxury and executive class. Delivered across 4 continents. Georgia's jaw tightened. 380 vehicles, right. And she was thinking about buying the Dallas Cowboys. She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. 380, that's quite a number. It is. Well, for a fleet order that size, we'd need to see corporate documentation, proof of funds, authorized purchasing agreements, letters of intent from your board, the whole 9 yards. I have preliminary contracts in my portfolio. He tapped the leather folder tucked under his arm. But first, I'd like to see the limited edition model in your private showcase, the one listed at $420,000. Georgia felt something cold settle in her stomach. The Obsidian Edition. The car they'd received 3 weeks ago, with explicit instructions from corporate show only to qualified buyers. Document everything. No test drives without management approval. She'd sold one last month to a hedge fund manager who paid cash without blinking. A man who'd arrived in a chauffeured Bentley wearing a watch worth more than Georgia's house. That was a qualified buyer. That was someone who belonged in that conversation. This man wanted to see it. The Obsidian Edition, Georgia said slowly. That's a serious vehicle. I'm aware. For serious buyers. I'm aware of that too. Georgia set her tablet down on a nearby desk. Harder than necessary. Maybe we should start with something more practical. We've got some excellent SUVs, sedans, even some hybrid models that are really popular right now. Great vehicles for someone looking to make a solid investment without overextending. I'd like to see the Obsidian Edition, please. Georgia checked her watch again, made sure he saw her do it. 3:01 p.m. Look, she said, dropping some of the professional polish from her voice. That vehicle requires an appointment. We don't just pull it out for casual viewing. I'm not viewing casually. His voice hadn't changed, still calm, still controlled. I'm evaluating your inventory for a corporate partnership. Sure he was, and Georgia was evaluating him for a one-way trip back to wherever he came from. She sighed, loud enough for him to hear, loud enough to make a point. Fine, let me see what I can do. She turned and walked toward the private showcase. Deliberately slow, each step measured to communicate exactly how much of her time she was wasting. She was hoping he'd get the message, hoping he'd realize he was out of his depth and quietly leave before this got any more embarrassing. He didn't. He followed 3 steps behind, silent except for his footsteps on the concrete floor. Georgia unlocked the glass partition and gestured inside. The Obsidian Edition sat under focused lighting, matte black exterior, custom interior 22-inch wheels that cost more than most people's cars. A vehicle built for people who had already bought everything else. This model starts at $420,000, Georgia said. Her voice had taken on that particular tone she used when explaining something to someone who wouldn't understand. Most buyers finance through our premium lending partners. We offer rates as low as 4.9% for qualified applicants. Though approval typically requires credit scores above 750 and verified annual income of at least $500,000. She glanced at him, waited for the reality to settle in, waited for the moment when he'd make some excuse and walk away. Now, the payment on something like this, even with excellent credit, you're looking at around $7,000 a month for 72 months. That's before insurance, which on a vehicle of this class runs about $900 monthly. So all in, you're at almost $8,000 a month just to keep it on the road. She paused for effect. That's a lot of money for most people. The man walked around the car slowly, methodically. He ran his fingers along the hood, checked the wheel rims, opened the driver's door, and looked inside without sitting down. Georgia crossed her arms. Her patience, whatever remained of it, was officially gone. The man closed the driver's door and stepped back. I'll take it. Georgia blinked. I'm sorry. I'll purchase this vehicle, today. For a moment, Georgia just stared at him. Then something that had been building inside her finally broke through a smile, wide and condescending. Sure, she said, pulling out her tablet. Absolutely. Let's just start with a credit application. I'll need your full legal name, social security number, current employment information, annual income. I'm paying cash. Georgia's finger froze mid-tap. Cash? Yes. She let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Couldn't help it. "Sir, this is a $420,000 vehicle. When you say cash, I'm assuming you mean financing with a large down payment. Because even with excellent credit." The man reached into his portfolio. He pulled out a single card. Matte black. No visible numbers, no logos. Just weight and silence. He placed it on the desk between them with a soft click. Georgia stared at it. The American Express Centurion card. The legendary black card. The one that supposedly required you to charge at least $250,000 annually just to qualify. The one that came by invitation only. The one that celebrities and billionaires carried. She picked it up, held it to the light, turned it over in her hands. And then, Georgia Crawford started laughing. It started as a chuckle, a small sound of disbelief. Then it built into something bigger, something louder. Genuine amusement that she couldn't contain. Other salespeople looked over from across the showroom. A couple examining an SUV turned toward the sound. Even the receptionist stood up from her desk to see what was so funny. "Oh, come on!" Georgia was shaking her head now, barely able to control herself. "Really? A black Centurion card." She held it up higher. Let the showroom lights catch it. "You." The man's face remained perfectly neutral, not angry, not embarrassed, just watching her. Georgia waved the card toward Trenton, a younger salesman who had wandered over to see what all the commotion was about. "Trenton, look at this. Come look at this." Trenton walked over reluctantly, glanced at the card, then at the man. His expression shifted to something uncomfortable. "Georgia, maybe we should just—" "Sir, I've been in this business 17 years. Georgia cut Trenton off her attention fully on the man with the card. "You can buy these knockoffs on Amazon for $30. They sell them at novelty shops. Gag gifts for people who want to feel important for 5 minutes. She bounced the card in her palm. "See, a real Centurion card has a specific weight. Titanium and stainless steel composite, about 14.7 grams. She bounced it again mockingly. "This feels like plastic with maybe some metal coating. These Chinese knockoffs are getting better, I'll give them that." She tossed the card back across the desk. It spun once before landing face up in front of him. "But they're still fake." A small crowd had gathered now. The couple from the SUV section. Dennis, an older salesman who'd been at Premier Auto for 20 years. 2 customers who'd stopped browsing to watch. Even the service department manager had walked out to see what was happening. Georgia was playing to the audience now. She could feel their attention on her, and something about it felt right, felt justified. "I've seen this scam before," she said, her voice carrying across the showroom. "Someone walks in off the street, tries to look important, pulls out some prop card they bought online, hopes we'll run it, and maybe they can grab some information. Or waste enough of our time that we miss real customers." She looked at the man directly. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I've got actual clients with actual money who actually deserve my time." She checked her watch. 3:15 p.m. "So here's how this is going to go. You're going to pick up your little Amazon card walk, back out those doors and find somewhere else to play pretend billionaire. Because this—" she gestured at the obsidian edition behind them. "This isn't for you. This was never for you." The man hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, just stood there with those calm, steady eyes fixed on her face. Something about that stillness should have warned her. Something about the way he wasn't reacting, wasn't getting angry, wasn't getting defensive, wasn't doing any of the things people usually did when they were caught in a lie should have set off alarm bells. But Georgia was too deep in her own momentum to notice. "Georgia." Trenton's voice was quiet, worried. "Georgia, maybe we should just run the card, just to be sure. Run it." Georgia laughed again. "Trenton, do you know how many fake cards I've seen in 17 years? Dozens, maybe hundreds. And every single time it's the same story. Same type of person walking in here thinking they can fool us." She looked at the man. "Same type." The words hung in the air. Dennis suddenly became very interested in his phone. Trenton looked at the floor. The couple from the SUV section exchanged a glance, but Georgia didn't notice, or didn't care. "Now I'm going to have to ask you to leave." She pulled her phone from her pocket, held it up so he could see the screen. "You can walk out on your own, or I can call security and they'll escort you out. Your choice. But either way," she smiled, "this conversation is over." The man reached across the desk. He picked up his card with 2 fingers. Slow, deliberate. Slid it back into his portfolio with the same precise motion. Then he took 1 step back, pulled out his phone, and began scrolling through his contacts. Georgia watched him, irritation flaring. Why wasn't he leaving? Why was he still standing there? "Did you hear me?" Her voice was sharper now. "I said you need to—" "I heard you." His fingers stopped scrolling. He tapped a name on the screen, held the phone to his ear. Georgia's jaw tightened. What was this now? Was he calling a lawyer, recording this for some viral video, trying to get her in trouble with corporate? Let him try. She had 17 years of performance reviews, 17 years of sales records, 17 years of being the best closer this dealership had ever seen. Let him try. The phone rang twice. Someone answered. "Cassandra," the man said. His voice was calm, steady, the same tone he'd used the entire time. "It's Marcus." Georgia rolled her eyes. Marcus. Of course his name was Marcus. She turned to Trenton. "Go check on the Hendersons in service. Make sure their car is ready." "Georgia, I really think—" "Just go." But Marcus's voice cut through their exchange, clear and firm. "Yes, I'm at the Premier Auto location now, the flagship dealership." Georgia barely listened. He was probably calling a friend. Probably complaining to someone who would tell him what he wanted to hear. Probably cancel the partnership. Georgia's hand froze on her tablet. All of it. She turned slowly. The $2.3 billion fleet contract with Premier Auto Group. Terminate it immediately. The showroom went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that happens when all the air gets sucked out of a room at once. Georgia felt the blood drain from her face. "Notify legal." Marcus continued, his voice never wavering. "Notify procurement. Send the cancellation to their board of directors. And Cassandra, prepare a press statement. I want it ready before close of business today." Georgia tried to speak. The words wouldn't come. Yes, cite incompatible service standards and a fundamental misalignment with corporate values. Make sure their entire executive team sees it before the weekend. "Wait." Georgia's voice came out as barely a whisper. "Wait, what are you—" "The contracts are in my portfolio. 380 vehicles across 16 countries. Total value $2.3 billion over the 5-year term." Marcus paused. "Yes. Cancel all of it." Dennis had gone completely white. Trenton stood frozen like someone had turned him to stone. The couple who had been watching had their phones out now recording. Georgia's hands were shaking. She could feel it happening but couldn't stop it. "Who—" Her voice cracked. "Who are you talking to? Who is this?" Marcus lowered the phone slightly, covered the microphone with his palm. "My chief operating officer." His eyes met hers. "We were scheduled to sign the final contracts with your company on Friday." He paused. "We were." "No." Georgia shook her head. The movement was frantic, desperate. No. You can't be. There's no way you're—" "One moment, Cassandra." Marcus looked directly at her. "I'm sorry. You were saying something." Georgia's tablet slipped from her fingers. It clattered against the floor. The sound echoed through the silent showroom like a gunshot. Her mouth worked, but no words came out. Around her, the other salespeople stood frozen. Dennis had his phone in his hand, but seemed to have forgotten what he was doing with it. Trenton looked like he might be sick. "Actually," Marcus said, returning to his call, "send me the draft statement within the hour, and make sure David Chen's name is on the distribution list. He's their regional director. We sat on a panel together 6 months ago." He paused. He should hear this from us before his board does. He ended the call. The silence that followed was absolute. Georgia's hands fumbled for her phone. Her fingers were shaking so badly she nearly dropped it twice before managing to open the browser. "What's—" Her voice was barely audible. "What's your name? Your full name? You didn't ask for it before." "Please." The word cracked in half. "Please, just what's your name?" "Marcus Lawson." Her fingers moved across the screen. MarcusLawson. The search results loaded. Georgia's eyes went wide. Marcus Lawson, CEO and founder, Lawson Tech Solutions. Her thumb scrolled. Net worth $8.7 billion. Scroll. Forbes 40 under 40. Scroll. Youngest self-made black tech billionaire in American history. Scroll. Lawson Tech Solutions announces major expansion into automotive fleet management. The phone slipped from her hands. It hit the floor face up the screen, still glowing with his Wikipedia page. His Forbes profile photo staring up at her from the polished concrete. The same face that was standing 3 feet away, watching her realize what she had done. "Oh my God!" George's voice was barely a sound. "Oh my God, you're Marcus Lawson. You're—" "Yes." His tone hadn't changed. Still calm, still level, like he'd been expecting this exact moment all along. "I'm Marcus Lawson, the man you just called a scammer, the man whose card you said was a $30 Amazon knockoff." He took one step toward her. "The man you threatened to have security removed from the building." Georgia felt her knees start to give out. She grabbed the edge of the desk to steady herself. "I didn't know." The words tumbled out in a rush. "I swear to God, I didn't know who you were. I thought you were—" "You didn't think." Marcus's voice cut through her stammering like a blade. "You assumed. There's a difference." Georgia's 17 years in the business. Her sales records. Her reputation. Her career. All of it crumbling in real time. And the worst part, the part that would keep her awake for years to come, was that she knew exactly why. She hadn't looked at his credentials, hadn't asked about his company, hadn't done any of the basic professional courtesies she would have extended to anyone else who walked through those doors asking about a fleet program. She'd looked at his face, and she'd decided he was nobody. Georgia couldn't breathe. The air in the showroom felt thick, heavy, like trying to inhale through wet concrete. Her chest was tight. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. And Marcus Lawson. The Marcus Lawson, the man whose net worth could buy this entire dealership chain 100 times over, was standing 3 feet away from her, watching her fall apart. "I made a mistake." The words came out broken, desperate. "A terrible, terrible mistake. But you have to understand, Mr. Lawson. We get people in here all the time who what?" The question was quiet, simple, but it stopped Georgia cold. Who try to—" She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't say it out loud. Not now. Not with everyone watching. Not with his eyes on her face. "Who try to what, Ms. Crawford?" Marcus took another step toward her. "Who walk in here and waste your time? Who don't belong in your showroom? Who look like they couldn't afford an oil change?" Georgia felt tears burning behind her eyes. "That's not what That's exactly what you meant." His voice was steady, controlled. Somehow that was worse than if he'd been yelling. "You looked at me and made a decision. In 10 seconds, maybe less. You decided I was a scammer, a fraud, someone trying to feel important for 5 minutes. "Please!" Georgia's voice cracked. "Please, I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to fix this. Anything. Just tell me what you want me to do." "I want you to answer my question." Marcus hadn't raised his voice once. He didn't need to. The entire showroom was hanging on every word. "Who do you get in here all the time? What kind of people describe them for me?" Georgia opened her mouth. Nothing came out. "You can't say it, can you?" Marcus nodded slowly. Because you know exactly what you meant. And so does everyone else in this room. Dennis had backed away toward the service desk. Trenton was staring at the floor like he wanted it to open up and swallow him whole. The couple with the phones had stopped recording. Even they looked uncomfortable now. But Georgia couldn't move. Couldn't speak. Couldn't do anything but stand there and feel 17 years of her career crumbling around her like a house built on sand. I've been standing in your showroom for 18 minutes, Marcus said. 18 minutes, Ms. Crawford. In that time, not a single person greeted me. Not a single person offered assistance. Not until you decided I needed to leave. I know. Georgia's voice was barely a whisper. I know, and when I presented a legitimate form of payment, Marcus continued, when I showed you a card that I've carried for 6 years, a card that has processed millions of dollars in transactions, you laughed at me, publicly, in front of your staff and your customers. I didn't know it was real. You thought it was fake because I was holding it. The words hit Georgia like a physical blow. She actually stumbled backward, catching herself on the edge of the desk. That's not... She shook her head frantically. That's not fair. That's not what happened. I would have questioned anyone who walked in here with a card like that. Anyone. Would you? Marcus reached into his portfolio, pulled out a photograph, held it up so Georgia could see it clearly. It showed a white man in his 60s, silver hair, expensive suit, standing next to the exact same obsidian edition that sat behind them in the private showcase. Do you recognize him? Georgia squinted at the photo. Her face went pale. That's Richard Harmon, the hedge fund manager. I sold him the first obsidian edition last month. Did you ask to see his identification? Georgia didn't answer. Did you question whether his payment method was legitimate? Still nothing. Did you laugh at him? Ms. Crawford? Did you tell him his card was a $30 Amazon knockoff? Did you threaten to call security? Georgia's silence was answer enough. Marcus slid the photograph back into his portfolio. Richard Harmon's net worth is approximately $400 million. Mine is $8.7 billion. 20 times his. He paused. But he got shown the car. He got processed without question. He got treated like a customer. He took one final step toward Georgia, close enough that she could see her own reflection in his eyes. And I got treated like a criminal. The showroom doors burst open with enough force to make everyone jump. David Chen came through at a dead sprint. His tie was loose, his jacket was missing. Sweat beaded on his forehead like he'd run the entire way from wherever he'd been. He stopped just inside the entrance chest, heaving eyes scanning the room frantically until they landed on Marcus. For a moment, David just stood there, breathing, processing, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Mr. Lawson? His voice was hoarse, desperate. Mr. Lawson, I just received a call from your office. They said the contract was canceled. They said correctly. David's face went through several distinct phases in rapid succession. Confusion, recognition, understanding. And then, when the full weight of what had happened finally settled onto his shoulders, absolute undisguised horror. No. He shook his head. The movement was frantic, disbelieving. No, that can't be right. We've been negotiating for 8 months. Everything was finalized. The board approved the terms last week. All we needed was your signature. You needed more than that. Marcus's voice was flat, cold. You needed to earn it. And you failed. David looked around the showroom. At Georgia standing there pale and trembling. At the gathered crowd of salespeople and customers. At Dennis and Trenton and the receptionist who hadn't moved from behind her desk. What happened? His voice cracked. Someone tell me what the hell happened in here. Nobody spoke. Georgia. David turned to face her directly. Something in his expression shifted. Hardened. What did you do? Georgia tried to respond. The words came out as a strangled sound that wasn't quite human. She didn't recognize me, Marcus said simply. And when she didn't recognize me, she assumed I was nobody, a scammer, someone wasting her valuable time. David's face went gray. She laughed at my Centurion card, called it a $30 knockoff from Amazon. Then she threatened to have security remove me from the building. The sound David made was somewhere between a gasp and a groan. He actually put his hand on a nearby desk to steady himself. $2.3 billion. David's voice was barely audible. 8 months of negotiations. Hundreds of hours of work from our entire executive team. And you, he turned to Georgia. The look on his face was something between rage and devastation. You did this. You actually did this. I didn't know who he was. George's voice broke into something like a sob. He didn't say he was Marcus Lawson. He just walked in like anyone else and what? David's voice rose to something close to a shout. What exactly did you do that made you think this was acceptable? That made you think laughing at a customer, any customer, was appropriate? I thought the card was fake. I've seen fake cards before. I was trying to protect the dealership from what? From a man trying to give us $2 billion. Georgia had no answer for that. The doors opened again. Ellen Pritchard rushed in, followed by 2 other executives Marcus didn't recognize. Ellen had clearly been in a meeting when she got the news. She was still holding a presentation remote in one hand and a stack of papers in the other. She saw Marcus and stopped dead in her tracks. Oh no. The words came out as barely a whisper. Oh no. Please tell me this isn't real. It's real, David said grimly. All of it. Ellen had been the lead negotiator on the Lawson Tech deal. She'd spent 6 months flying back and forth between Houston and Dallas. She'd personally walked Marcus through every specification, every timeline, every contingency. She'd missed her daughter's school play for a late-night contract revision session. And now she was watching all of that work evaporate in real time. Mr. Lawson? Ellen set down her papers and walked toward him slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. Mr. Lawson, please. Whatever happened here, whatever was said, I know we can find a way to make this right. Do you? Marcus's eyebrows rose slightly. Tell me, Miss Pritchard, how do you make this right? We can. Ellen hesitated. We can terminate Georgia immediately. Today. Right now, if that's what it takes. Hey! Georgia stepped forward, panic overriding whatever good sense she had left. You can't just fire me over one mistake. I have rights. I have a contract. I've worked here for 17 years. One mistake. David whirled on her. One mistake. You just cost this company the largest deal in its history. Do you have any idea what that means? Any concept whatsoever of what you've done? I was doing my job. George's voice rose to match his. I was protecting the dealership. Do you know how many scammers walk through these doors? How many people try to waste our time with fake cards and fake promises? And how do you identify these scammers, Georgia? Marcus's quiet voice cut through their argument. What's your methodology? What criteria do you use? Georgia turned to face him. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. She swallowed hard. I evaluate. You look at what exactly? Marcus stepped closer. Their credentials, their business cards, their portfolio of corporate contracts. I look at... George's voice trailed off into nothing. You look at their skin. Marcus finished for her. You make a judgment in 10 seconds based on what you see, and then you decide whether they're worth your time. That's exactly what you did to me, Ms. Crawford. That's exactly what you've been doing for 17 years. The only difference is that today you did it to someone who could make you answer for it. The silence that followed was suffocating. Ellen broke it first. Mr. Lawson, please. I understand you're angry. You have every right to be angry. What happened here today was inexcusable, unforgivable. But please, there has to be something we can do, some way to move forward. Move forward. Marcus turned to face her. Ms. Pritchard, let me ask you something. If I had been exactly who your sales manager assumed, I was just some random black man who wandered in off the street, would we be having this conversation? Ellen hesitated. Would you have rushed over here in the middle of your meeting? Would Mr. Chen have sprinted through those doors like his career depended on it? Would anyone in this room care what happened to me? Ellen looked away. That's what I thought. Marcus nodded slowly. You're not sorry this happened. You're sorry it happened to me. There's a difference. That's not fair. One of the executives behind Ellen stepped forward. A younger man with a sharp suit and a sharper expression. We can't control how every employee behaves. We have training programs, diversity initiatives. You have a senior sales manager who felt completely comfortable laughing at a black man in front of a crowd. Marcus cut him off. Who felt confident enough in her assumptions to publicly mock a customer based on nothing but the color of his skin? That doesn't happen in a vacuum. That happens in an environment where people believe, whether consciously or not, that it's acceptable. The young executive opened his mouth to respond. David grabbed his arm and shook his head sharply. Whatever argument he'd been about to make died in his throat. I've built my company from nothing, Marcus said. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the entire showroom. I started in a dorm room with a laptop and an idea. No investors, no connections, no family money to fall back on. Just me and a vision. He looked around at the assembled executives, the salespeople, the customers who were still watching. Do you know how many times I've been told I don't belong? How many boardrooms I've walked into where people assumed I was the assistant? How many times I've presented my own work and had someone ask to speak to the real CEO? Nobody answered. I've sat across from venture capitalists who told me to my face that they don't invest in diversity hires. I've had investors look at my projections and ask if I was sure the numbers were right, not because the math was wrong, but because they couldn't believe a black man had done it. Marcus reached into his portfolio and pulled out a stack of papers, the contracts, the ones that were supposed to be signed on Friday. $8.7 billion. He held up the papers. That's what I've built. That's what my vision is worth. And your senior sales manager looked at me and saw a scammer with a fake credit card. He let the contracts fall onto the desk. They landed with a soft thud that somehow echoed through the silent showroom. This isn't about money. It was never about money. It's about respect, basic human dignity, the simple courtesy of being treated like a person instead of a threat. Georgia made a sound, something between a sob and a word. I didn't know, she whispered. How was I supposed to know who you were? You weren't. Marcus turned to face her. That's the point. You weren't supposed to know who I was. You were supposed to treat me like a customer regardless. That's literally your job. But the card? You never even ran the card, Ms. Crawford. You never swiped it, never tried to verify it. You looked at me, decided it was fake, and started laughing. Georgia's face crumpled. If I had handed you that same card, Marcus gestured toward the photograph still visible in his portfolio, the one of Richard Harmon. Would you have laughed? Would you have called it a knockoff? Would you have threatened to call security? Georgia didn't answer. She didn't have to. They both knew the truth. David Chen's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his face went even paler. The board is calling, he said quietly. Word is getting out. They want answers. Then you'd better start thinking of some. Marcus picked up his portfolio. Because this story isn't going away. My press statement will be released before the end of business today, and I've instructed my communications team to be completely transparent about what happened here. Ellen's hand flew to her mouth. Mr. Lawson, please, if this goes public. It's already public. Marcus gestured toward the customers who had been recording. How many people do you think have seen those videos in the last 10 minutes? How many shares? How many comments? David looked toward the couple with the phones. They had the decency to look away. By tomorrow morning, this will be on every business news site in the country, Marcus continued. By the end of the week, it'll be a case study in corporate diversity training programs. And by next month, business schools will be teaching it as an example of how one employee's prejudice can cost a company everything. Please. Georgia stepped forward. Her makeup was ruined. Mascara ran down her cheeks in dark streaks. Please, Mr. Lawson. I have a family. I have 2 kids. I have a mortgage. I've worked here for 17 years. Please don't destroy my life over one mistake. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. One mistake, he repeated. Is that what you think this was? Yes, exactly. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has bad days. I saw the card and I made a snap judgment and I was wrong. I admit it. I was completely, totally wrong. But please. Let me tell you something about mistakes, Ms. Crawford. Marcus's voice was soft now, almost gentle. Somehow that was worse than anger. A mistake is when you add a column of numbers wrong. A mistake is when you send an email to the wrong person. A mistake is when you forget someone's name or mix up an appointment time. He took a step toward her. What you did wasn't a mistake. It was a revelation. You showed me exactly who you are, how you think, what you believe about people who look like me. I don't believe anything. Georgia's voice rose to something close to a shriek. I'm not racist. I've never been racist. I treat everyone the same, regardless of... You laughed at me. Marcus cut her off. In front of a room full of people, you looked at a black man holding a black card and thought it was the funniest thing you'd ever seen. You called it a prop, a knockoff, a scam. And you did it loudly enough for everyone in this building to hear. Georgia was crying openly now. The tears flowed down her face unchecked. I was trying to protect the dealership. That's all I was doing. I've seen so many scammers, so many frauds, so many people trying to waste our time. And I fit the profile. Marcus's eyebrows rose. Is that what you're telling me? That I fit the profile of the people who waste your time? Georgia's mouth opened. Closed. She seemed to realize too late what she was actually saying. I didn't mean... You meant exactly what you said. Marcus picked up the contracts from the desk, held them up so everyone could see. 380 vehicles, 16 countries, $2.3 billion over 5 years, the largest corporate fleet deal in your company's 95-year history. He tore the contracts in half. The sound of ripping paper was shockingly loud in the silent showroom. Gone. He tore them again. Because you looked at me and saw a scammer. Another tear. Because you thought my card was fake. Another. Because 17 years of experience taught you that people like me don't belong in your showroom. The pieces of paper fluttered to the floor. Ellen made a small, wounded sound. David closed his eyes. I didn't come here to test you, Marcus said. I came here to evaluate your service standards before committing my company to a major partnership. I wanted to see how you treat customers when you don't know who's watching. He looked at Georgia. And I got my answer. David's phone buzzed again, and again, and again. He pulled it out and stared at the screen like it was a bomb about to go off. Reporters, he said quietly. 3 different outlets. They want comments. Then you'd better start talking. Marcus walked toward the exit, because the story is already out there. The only question now is how it ends. Wait! David stepped forward. His voice was desperate, broken. Mr. Lawson, please. Wait, there has to be something we can do. Some way to make this right. We'll fire Georgia. We'll implement new training. We'll make a public apology. We'll donate to any charity you choose. Anything. Just please don't walk away from this partnership. Marcus stopped at the door, turned back to face the room one final time. You still don't understand, he said quietly. Do you think this is about leverage, about negotiating position, about what you can offer me to make this go away? He shook his head slowly. It's not about that. It never was. It's about the fact that your company at its core employs people who believe that someone like me doesn't deserve to be treated with basic dignity. And all the training programs and diversity initiatives and public apologies in the world won't change that. He pushed open the door. Because you can't train character. You can't fire prejudice. And you can't apologize your way out of who you really are. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Inside the showroom, no one moved. No one spoke. Georgia Crawford stood alone in the center of the room, surrounded by the torn pieces of a $2.3 billion contract, and tried to understand how her life had just ended in 18 minutes. The silence lasted exactly 7 seconds. Then David Chen's phone rang, and Ellen Pritchard's phone rang, and the receptionist's desk phone rang. And suddenly the entire showroom was filled with the sound of devices buzzing and chiming and screaming for attention. David answered first. His face went from gray to white to something that looked almost green as he listened. He didn't speak, just nodded, made small sounds of acknowledgement. And when he finally hung up, he looked like a man who had just received a terminal diagnosis. That was corporate headquarters in Chicago, he said. His voice was hollow. Dead. The CEO, personally. Ellen's hand flew to her chest. What did he say? He said the Lawson Tech Communications Department just sent over a press release for courtesy review before it goes live. David swallowed hard. It names the dealership. It names Georgia. It includes quotes from witnesses, and it's scheduled to hit every major wire service in 45 minutes. Georgia made a sound that wasn't quite human. No. She shook her head frantically. No. They can't do that. They can't just put my name in a press release. That's defamation. That's slander. I'll sue. You'll what? David turned on her with sudden fury. You'll sue the man whose card you called fake, the billionaire CEO you laughed at in front of witnesses, the person whose $2 billion contract you just destroyed. It wasn't my fault I didn't know who he was. That's the whole point. David's voice rose to something close to a roar. You didn't know. You had no idea. And because you didn't know, because you just assumed he was nobody, you treated him like garbage. I was doing my job. Your job is to sell cars. Your job is to treat every customer who walks through that door with respect and professionalism. Your job is not to decide who deserves your time based on what they look like. Georgia stepped backward like she'd been slapped. You're trying to make this about race. That's not what this was. I would have questioned anyone who walked in here with a card like that. Would you? Ellen spoke up now. Her voice was quiet, controlled, but there was something dangerous underneath it. Because I've seen you work for 6 years, Georgia. I've watched you greet customers, and I've noticed patterns. What patterns? What are you talking about? I'm talking about who you approach first, who you offer coffee to, who you show the premium vehicles, and who you steer toward the pre-owned lot. Ellen's eyes were hard. I noticed. I just never said anything. And now I wish to God I had. Georgia's face contorted. That's not fair. That's not true. I treat everyone the same. You literally just told a black man that his Centurion card was a $30 Amazon knockoff. Dennis spoke for the first time since Marcus had left. His voice was tired, sad. In front of all of us. In front of customers. In front of cameras. He gestured toward where the recording couple had been standing. They were gone now, but the damage was already done. Those videos are probably on social media already, Dennis continued. By tomorrow, they'll have millions of views. By next week, we'll be a hashtag. Georgia looked around the room desperately, looking for someone, anyone who might take her side, who might tell her this wasn't as bad as it seemed, who might offer some path back to the life she'd had 45 minutes ago. She found no one. This isn't fair, she whispered. One mistake, one bad judgment call, and everything I've worked for, everything I've built, it's all just gone. You should have thought about that before you started laughing. David pulled out his phone again, started typing rapidly. I need to call legal. I need to call HR. I need to figure out how we're going to respond to this before the press release goes live. What about me? Georgia's voice cracked. What happens to me? David stopped typing, looked at her with an expression that mixed disgust with something almost like pity. What do you think happens to you, Georgia? You just cost this company $2.3 billion. You embarrassed us in front of the biggest potential client in our history. You're about to become the face of everything wrong with corporate America. He shook his head slowly. What do you think happens? Georgia felt her legs give out. She grabbed the edge of the desk mist and collapsed onto the showroom floor. The torn pieces of the contract scattered around her like confetti at the world's worst party. I have 2 kids, she sobbed. I have a mortgage. I have car payments. I've given this company 17 years of my life. And in 18 minutes you threw it all away. Ellen's voice was cold. I hope it was worth it. The phone on the receptionist's desk rang again, and again, and again. David answered it, listened for 30 seconds. His face somehow got even paler. That was the Wall Street Journal, he said when he hung up. They want a comment for a story they're running in tomorrow's edition. The headline is going to be... He stopped, took a breath. Billion-dollar bias. How one dealership's racism cost them everything. Ellen closed her eyes. Oh God. They already have the video, multiple angles. Someone inside the showroom uploaded it within minutes of the incident. David ran his hand through his hair. It's everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. The business channels are picking it up. By tonight, this will be national news. Georgia was still on the floor, still crying, still surrounded by the torn remnants of a contract that represented more money than she would have made in 100 lifetimes. What am I supposed to do? Her voice was barely audible. What am I supposed to tell my family? My kids? Nobody answered her. Because nobody had an answer. The next 3 hours were chaos. Corporate sent a crisis management team from Chicago. They arrived in a chartered jet, walked into the dealership like they owned it, and immediately took over the conference room. David and Ellen were summoned inside. Georgia was told to wait in the break room. She sat there alone, staring at the vending machine, watching her reflection in the glass. How had this happened? How had her life fallen apart so completely so quickly? One customer, one interaction, one laugh that she couldn't take back. She replayed it in her mind, over and over. The moment she'd seen him walk in, the way she'd immediately dismissed him, the certainty she'd felt when she saw that black card. It had to be fake. It had to be. Because men like him didn't carry cards like that. Men like him didn't walk into dealerships like hers and buy vehicles that cost more than most houses. Except he did. He had. And she'd laughed at him for it. Georgia buried her face in her hands. The door opened. She looked up expecting David or Ellen, or maybe someone from HR with termination paperwork. It was Trenton. The young salesman stood in the doorway looking like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. He was holding a cup of coffee. After a moment's hesitation, he walked over and set it on the table in front of her. Thought you might need this. Georgia stared at the cup. Why are you being nice to me? Trenton sat down across from her. He didn't answer right away, just looked at his hands. I saw everything, he finally said. From the beginning, when he first walked in. Georgia didn't respond. I saw him standing by that silver sedan, waiting. Nobody approached him. Trenton's voice was quiet, careful. I saw 3 other customers come in after him. Every single one of them got greeted within 30 seconds. What's your point? My point is... Trenton hesitated. My point is that I didn't say anything either. I saw what was happening. I knew it wasn't right. And I just watched. Georgia looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. Why are you telling me this? Because I don't think you're a monster. Trenton met her eyes. I think you made a terrible mistake. A mistake that came from somewhere deep inside you that you probably didn't even know was there. And I think that's worse in some ways. Because if you were just some obvious racist, we could all feel good about hating you. But you're not. You're just someone who didn't see what was right in front of her. Georgia felt fresh tears welling up. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No, it's supposed to make you think. Trenton leaned forward. About why you made those assumptions, about why you felt so certain that card was fake, about why you laughed. I don't know why I laughed. Georgia's voice broke. I've been sitting here for 3 hours trying to understand it, and I don't know. Yes, you do. Trenton's voice was gentle but firm. You know exactly why. You just don't want to admit it. Georgia was quiet for a long moment. When I was growing up, she finally said, my father owned a small business, hardware store in a little town outside of Memphis. He used to tell me stories about people who would come in and try to scam him. Write bad checks. Return stolen merchandise. Claim items were defective when they weren't. She paused, stared at the coffee cup. He always told me to watch out for certain types of people. People who didn't look like they belonged. People who seemed too confident. People who... She couldn't finish the sentence. People who looked like Marcus Lawson. Trenton finished for her. Georgia didn't deny it. My father wasn't a bad man. He was just careful, protective. He'd been burned before, and he wanted to make sure I didn't make the same mistakes. She laughed bitterly. I guess I made different ones. The question is what you do now. Trenton stood up. You can spend the rest of your life blaming your father, blaming your upbringing, blaming everything except yourself. Or you can own it, admit what you did, try to be better. What's the point? George's voice was hollow. My career is over. My reputation is destroyed. In a few hours, my name is going to be synonymous with corporate racism. Nothing I do now will change that. Maybe not. Trenton walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle. But at least you'll know who you are, and maybe that's worth something. He left her alone with her coffee and her thoughts. At 6:47 p.m., Georgia was summoned to the conference room. The crisis management team had set up a makeshift command center. Laptops covered every surface. Phone chargers snaked across the floor. A television in the corner was muted, but showing CNN where a chyron at the bottom of the screen read, Billionaire CEO cancels 2B deal after alleged discrimination. David was there. Ellen was there. 3 executives from Chicago she'd never seen before were there. And at the head of the table sat a man she recognized from company newsletters and annual reports, Robert Ashford, CEO of Premier Auto Group's parent company. He was 72 years old, silver hair, cold eyes, the kind of man who had built an empire by making hard decisions and never looking back. Sit down, Ms. Crawford. Georgia sat. Robert Ashford didn't waste time with pleasantries. I've spent the last 3 hours on the phone with our board of directors, our major shareholders, and our legal team. I've reviewed the video footage from the showroom. I've read the witness statements. And I've seen the press release that Lawson Tech distributed 30 minutes ago. He slid a piece of paper across the table. Georgia picked it up, read it. Her hand started shaking before she reached the second paragraph. The press release was devastating. It didn't just describe what happened, it contextualized it. It placed her actions within a broader pattern of discrimination in luxury retail. It cited studies and statistics. It quoted civil rights leaders and diversity experts. And it named her, by name, with direct quotes from witnesses about what she had said and done. The stock price has already dropped 8%. Robert Ashford continued. Our PR team estimates it will fall another 10 to 15% by the end of the week. We've received cancellation notices from 3 other corporate clients who were in active negotiations with us. And I've personally received calls from 2 members of Congress demanding an investigation into our hiring and training practices. Georgia couldn't speak. In my 45 years in this industry, I have never seen a single employee cause this much damage in this little time. Robert Ashford's voice was flat, emotionless, like he was reading from a script. The question now is how we respond. I'll resign, Georgia said quickly. I'll resign immediately. I'll issue a public apology. I'll do whatever you need me to do to... It's too late for that. Robert Ashford cut her off. Your resignation would look like damage control. It would suggest that we're only taking action because we got caught. The narrative is already set. Premier Auto Group employed a racist. That racist cost us billions, and now we're scrambling to save face. Then what do you want from me? Robert Ashford leaned forward. His cold eyes locked onto hers. I want you to understand something, Ms. Crawford. What you did today didn't just cost us a contract. It didn't just damage our reputation. It confirmed something that a lot of people already believed about companies like ours, about industries like ours, about people like us. He let that sink in. You became a symbol. In 18 minutes, you became the face of everything wrong with corporate America, the face of bias, the face of prejudice, the face of casual, thoughtless racism that exists in every showroom, every boardroom, every place where people like Marcus Lawson have to prove they belong. Georgia felt tears streaming down her face. I'm not racist. I never thought of myself as... It doesn't matter what you think of yourself. Robert Ashford's voice was sharp. It matters what you did. It matters that you looked at a black man and decided he was a scammer. It matters that you laughed at him. It matters that you threatened to call security on someone who was trying to give us $2 billion. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Robert Ashford stood up. And now we all have to live with the consequences. He gathered his papers, nodded to the other executives. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. You'll receive your final paycheck and any accrued benefits within 30 days. Beyond that, Premier Auto Group has no further relationship with you. Georgia felt the world tilting. That's it. After 17 years, that's just... it. Ms. Crawford. Robert Ashford paused at the door. You should consider yourself fortunate. Our legal team wanted to pursue civil action for damages. I convinced them that the optics would be worse than the potential recovery. He looked at her one final time. You destroyed yourself today. Don't make us destroy what little you have left. He left. The other executives followed. David and Ellen avoided eye contact as they walked past her. Georgia sat alone in the conference room, surrounded by laptops and phone chargers and the muted television showing her name on national news. She thought about Marcus Lawson, about the way he'd stood there, calm and controlled while she laughed at him, about the look in his eyes when she'd called his card fake, about the quiet, devastating precision with which he'd dismantled her entire life. She wondered if he was watching the news right now, if he was satisfied with what he'd done, if he felt any sympathy for the woman whose career he'd ended with a single phone call. Probably not. Why would he? She wouldn't have felt sympathy for him. That was the whole point. At 8:15 p.m., Georgia Crawford walked out of Premier Auto Group for the last time. 2 security guards escorted her. One carried a cardboard box containing 17 years of accumulated personal items, a coffee mug with her kids' pictures on it, a plaque from her 10-year service anniversary, a small cactus that had somehow survived on her desk for the better part of a decade. The parking lot was full of news vans. Reporters shouted questions as she emerged. Cameras flashed. Someone stuck a microphone in her face. Ms. Crawford, do you have any comment on the allegations of racial discrimination? Ms. Crawford, have you spoken with Marcus Lawson since the incident? Ms. Crawford, what would you say to other black customers who have experienced similar treatment? Georgia kept her head down, kept walking. The security guards cleared a path through the crowd. She reached her car. A Honda Accord she'd bought 6 years ago with her employee discount. She put the cardboard box in the back seat, got behind the wheel, started the engine. The reporters were still surrounding her vehicle, still shouting questions, still pointing cameras at her windows. Georgia sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, trying to remember how to drive, trying to remember how to breathe. Her phone buzzed. A text from her husband. "I saw the news. We need to talk. Come home." Georgia stared at the message. Come home. To what? To explain to her children why their mother was on television, to tell her husband that the career she'd built over 17 years was gone, to face the reality of what she'd done and what it had cost. She put the car in reverse, backed out slowly, forcing the reporters to scatter, pulled out of the parking lot. In her rearview mirror, she could see the Premier Auto Group sign, the one that had said 95 years of excellence that morning. Someone had already taken it down. As Georgia drove into the night, she thought about what Trenton had said in the break room, about owning what she'd done, about trying to be better. She wasn't sure she knew how, but for the first time in her life, she understood why it mattered. Marcus Lawson didn't go home. He drove for an hour after leaving the dealership. No destination in mind, just movement. The Tesla's autopilot handled the highway while his mind processed what had just happened. His phone had been buzzing nonstop since he'd gotten in the car. Cassandra, his board members, his PR team, 3 different reporters who had somehow gotten his direct number. He ignored all of them. The sun was setting over the Texas plains when he finally pulled off at a rest stop. Empty, except for a few trucks and a family in a minivan loading up on snacks. Nobody recognized him. Nobody cared. He sat in his car and thought about Georgia Crawford. He thought about the way she'd looked at him when he first walked in. The instant assessment. The immediate dismissal. He'd seen it 1,000 times before. In boardrooms, in restaurants, in hotel lobbies where desk clerks asked if he was sure he had a reservation. But there was something different about today. Something that had gotten under his skin in a way he hadn't expected. Maybe it was the laugh. That genuine, uncontrolled amusement at the idea that someone like him could carry a card like that. Maybe it was the crowd, all those people watching recording and nobody saying a word. Or maybe it was just that he'd been so close. 8 months of negotiations, hundreds of hours of due diligence. A deal that would have changed the trajectory of his company's fleet operations for the next decade. And it had all fallen apart because one woman looked at his face and decided he was nobody. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a name he couldn't ignore. Mom. Marcus answered. Hey. I saw the news. His mother's voice was thick with emotion. Baby, are you okay? I'm fine, Mom. Don't you dare tell me you're fine. I know you. I know what that voice means. She paused. Where are you? Rest stop. Somewhere between Dallas and Houston. Pull over properly. Turn off the car. Talk to me. Marcus almost smiled. 62 years old, and his mother still treated him like he was 12. Some things never changed. I'm already parked. Good. Now tell me what really happened. So he did. From the beginning. Walking into the showroom, the way no one greeted him. Georgia's condescension, the laugh, the phone call to Cassandra. Everything. When he finished, his mother was quiet for a long moment. I'm proud of you. Marcus blinked. Proud of me? For standing up for yourself. For not letting it slide. For making them feel the consequences of what they did. I destroyed that woman's career, Mom. She's going to be a national pariah by tomorrow morning. She destroyed her own career. His mother's voice was firm. You just made sure people knew about it. There's a difference. Is there? Marcus. His mother sighed. Do you remember what your grandfather used to say? About respect. Marcus closed his eyes. Respect isn't given. It's demanded. That's right. And for too long, people like us have been taught to accept disrespect, to shrug it off, to take the high road while they walk all over us. His mother's voice hardened. Your grandfather spent his whole life being polite, being patient, waiting for respect that never came. And you know where it got him. I know. He died at 57, heart attack. The doctor said it was stress. But I know what really killed him. It was a lifetime of swallowing his anger, a lifetime of being treated like less than, a lifetime of smiling through insults, because that's what black men were supposed to do. Marcus gripped his phone tighter. You don't have to swallow anything, his mother continued. You built something real, something powerful, and that woman looked at you and decided you were nothing, so you showed her different. You showed all of them different. But was it worth it? $2 billion, Mom. That was a good deal. The company needed that partnership. The company will survive. You'll find another partner, someone who deserves your business. His mother's voice softened. But if you'd walked away from that dealership without saying anything, if you'd let that woman's laugh follow you out the door, that would have cost you something you can't get back. What's that? Your peace, your self-respect, your sense of who you are. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. She had kids, he finally said. 2 of them. She kept talking about her mortgage, her career. And that's supposed to make you feel guilty. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. You're supposed to feel however you feel. There's no right answer. His mother paused. But let me ask you something. If you'd walked in there as nobody, just some regular black man with no billions behind him, and she'd treated you the same way, what would have happened? Nothing. Exactly, nothing. She would have laughed at you, kicked you out, and gone back to her day without a second thought, and you would have had to carry that humiliation with you. No recourse, no consequences for her. Just another day of someone treating you like less than. So I'm supposed to be glad I could fight back? No. You're supposed to understand that most people can't. And what you did today, standing up, refusing to be dismissed, making them feel the weight of their prejudice, that wasn't just for you. It was for every black man who ever walked into a place like that and got treated the same way, but couldn't do anything about it. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Something that had been tight and angry started to loosen. When did you get so wise? His mother laughed. I've always been wise. You just never listened. I'm listening now. Good. Then come home. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. I know. And Marcus. Yeah. What you did today. Your grandfather would have been proud too. She hung up. Marcus sat in his car, watching the last rays of sunlight fade over the horizon, and for the first time since walking out of that dealership, he felt something close to peace. 300 miles away, Georgia Crawford was sitting in her living room staring at a television she couldn't bear to turn on. Her husband Tom sat across from her. The kids were upstairs, supposedly doing homework, but probably watching the news on their phones. Everyone in America was watching the news tonight. Tom hadn't said much since she'd gotten home. He'd listened to her explanation, watched her cry, held her for a while. But now he just sat there looking at her like he was seeing someone he didn't recognize. I don't understand, he finally said. I've known you for 23 years. We've been married for 19. I've never seen you act like that, never heard you say things like that. I didn't say anything racist. I just thought the card was fake. Georgia. Tom's voice was tired, patient. The way it got when he was trying very hard not to lose his temper. Why did you think it was fake? Because people come in all the time trying to scam us. I've seen it hundreds of times. Fake cards, fake IDs, fake everything. And what do these scammers look like? Georgia opened her mouth, closed it. I'm not trying to attack you, Tom continued. I'm trying to understand. Because the woman I married, the woman I thought I knew, she wouldn't laugh at a customer. She wouldn't threaten to call security on someone for trying to buy a car. He didn't look like he could afford it. What does that mean? What does someone who can afford a $400,000 car look like? Georgia didn't answer. Our neighbor Craig drives a Porsche. He's a dentist, makes maybe $300,000 a year. He dresses like a college student half the time. Would you have laughed at him? That's different. How is it different? Georgia felt tears welling up again. I don't know, Tom. I don't know how to explain it. I just looked at him and I knew I was so sure that he didn't belong there, that he was wasting my time. You knew. Tom repeated the word slowly. You looked at a black man in a blazer carrying a portfolio, asking about your executive fleet program, and you knew he was a scammer. Stop making it about race. It was always about race, Georgia. Tom's voice rose for the first time. That's what you don't understand. That's what you've never understood. You looked at that man and saw a threat, not a customer, not a human being, a threat, and you reacted accordingly. I'm not racist. Then what are you? The question hung in the air between them. Heavy, impossible to answer. I don't know, Georgia whispered. I thought I knew who I was. I thought I was a good person, a good mother, a good employee. And now you're the face of corporate discrimination. Tom slumped back in his chair. They're already talking about you on CNN. Fox News has your picture up. Someone found your Facebook profile and posted screenshots of your kids. George's blood went cold. They posted pictures of the kids, just screenshots from your profile, nothing too identifying. But it's only a matter of time before someone shows up here with a camera. Oh God. I've already called the police, asked them to do extra patrols, but there's only so much they can do. Georgia buried her face in her hands. What am I supposed to do? How do I fix this? I don't know if you can fix it. Tom's voice was hollow. This isn't like making a mistake at work and apologizing. This is national news, international news. Your name is going to be linked to this story for the rest of your life. I just want it to go away. It's not going to go away. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Tom stood up, walked to the window. I've been getting calls all evening. Friends, family, people we haven't heard from in years. Some of them are supportive. Some of them what? Some of them agree with what you did. Georgia looked up. What? My cousin Randy called. Said you were right to be suspicious. Said those people are always trying to pull scams. Tom's voice was tight with disgust. I hung up on him. Tom, I don't want to hear it. He turned to face her. I don't want to hear that other people think the same way you do. I don't want to know how many of our friends and family members look at black people and see criminals. I just want to know one thing. What? Is this who you really are? Deep down underneath all the training and the professionalism and the customer service smile, is this who you've always been? Georgia felt something break inside her. I don't know anymore. I thought I knew myself. I thought I was fair. But when I saw him standing there, something just clicked, like a switch. And I was so certain, so absolutely certain that I was right. You were wrong. I know. You destroyed a man's day. You destroyed your own career. You destroyed this family's peace. Tom's voice cracked. And for what? Because you couldn't imagine a black man with money. It wasn't about money. It was always about money. It was about who you think deserves to have it, who you think belongs in your fancy showroom, who you think gets to be treated like a human being. Tom walked toward the stairs. I need some space. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. Tom, please. I love you, Georgia. I've loved you for 23 years. But right now, I don't like you very much. And I need time to figure out what that means. He disappeared upstairs. Georgia heard his footsteps. The sound of the guest room door closing. Then silence. She sat alone in her living room, surrounded by family photos and comfortable furniture and all the trappings of a life she'd built over 17 years of hard work. And she wondered if any of it would survive what she'd done. The next morning, Marcus woke to 347 unread emails and 89 voicemails. His PR team had been working through the night. The press release had gone viral in ways they hadn't anticipated. News outlets around the world were picking up the story. Social media was on fire. The video of Georgia laughing at his card had been viewed over 40 million times. Cassandra was in his home office by 7 a.m., looking like she hadn't slept. "The response is overwhelming," she said, setting down a stack of printouts. "We've received over 12,000 emails of support. Business leaders, civil rights organizations, average people who've had similar experiences. Everyone wants to talk to you." "What about the other side?" Cassandra hesitated. "There's been some pushback. People saying you overreacted, that you should have given them a chance to make it right, that canceling a $2 billion contract was excessive." "Let me guess, most of those people aren't black." "Most of them, yes." Marcus picked up the top printout. A summary of social media sentiment. 78% positive, 15% negative, 7% neutral. Premier Auto's stock dropped another 12% overnight. Cassandra continued. Their CEO put out a statement at 2 a.m. apologizing for the incident and announcing a company-wide review of their diversity and inclusion practices. Too little too late. Agreed. But they're trying to control the narrative. Cassandra pulled up something on her tablet. They've also announced that Georgia Crawford has been terminated and that they're implementing mandatory bias training for all employees. That should have been implemented years ago. It should have. But it's something. Cassandra set the tablet down. "Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Always. Do you regret it? Canceling the contract. Walking away from $2.3 billion. Marcus was quiet for a moment. He thought about his mother's words from the night before, about his grandfather dying at 57 from a lifetime of swallowed anger, about every black man who'd ever been dismissed and degraded and had no recourse. "No," he finally said. "I don't regret it. Even knowing what it's done to her. The videos of her leaving the dealership are everywhere. People are finding her home address, her kids' schools. It's becoming a witch hunt. I didn't ask people to do that. But you had to know it would happen. When you told them to put her name in the press release, you had to know." Marcus stood up, walked to the window. His Houston skyline stretched out before him, gleaming in the morning sun. "When I was 15, he said quietly, I got my first job, bagging groceries at a store near my house. Minimum wage, 40 hours a week in the summer." Cassandra didn't interrupt. "One day the manager called me into his office, said there had been complaints, customers saying I was too slow, that I was surly, that I made them uncomfortable. Was any of it true? No, I was one of the fastest baggers they had. Got compliments all the time. But the manager believed the complaints, didn't even ask for my side. Just told me I needed to improve my attitude, or I'd be let go." Marcus turned to face Cassandra. "A week later, I found out what really happened. One of the other baggers, white kid named Steve, had been stealing from the registers. When customers noticed discrepancies, the manager needed someone to blame. And between Steve and me, who do you think got the benefit of the doubt? You. Me. I got written up, put on probation, made to feel like a criminal for something I didn't do." Marcus's voice was steady, but there was something burning underneath. "And do you know what the worst part was? When Steve finally got caught, when they found the money in his locker, nobody apologized to me. Nobody even acknowledged what had happened. Marcus, I've spent 30 years building something, fighting for everything I have, proving over and over again that I belong in rooms where people don't think I should be. He picked up one of the printouts. A screenshot of Georgia Crawford's face mid-laugh. And yesterday in 18 minutes, that woman showed me that none of it mattered. $8.7 billion, and she still looked at me and saw a scammer. So you wanted her to feel what it's like? I wanted consequences. Marcus set the printout down. I wanted for once in my life for someone who treated me like less than to actually face repercussions. Not just a slap on the wrist. Not just a diversity training session. Real consequences. The kind that might make the next person think twice before they laugh at someone who doesn't look like them. And did it work? Do you feel better? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. No. He finally admitted. I don't feel better. I don't feel worse either. I just feel tired. Tired of having to fight this battle over and over. Tired of being the example. Tired of having to prove every single day that I deserve to be treated like a human being. Cassandra stood up, walked over to him, put a hand on his shoulder. For what it's worth, she said quietly, I think you did the right thing. Maybe not the easy thing. Maybe not the kind thing, but the right thing. I'm not sure there is a right thing anymore. Just different kinds of wrong. Maybe. But at least this wrong sent a message. And maybe that message will save someone else the humiliation you went through. Marcus nodded slowly. Maybe. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He looked at the screen. Read the message. His expression didn't change. What is it? Cassandra asked. It's from her, Marcus said quietly. From Georgia Crawford. Cassandra's eyes widened. What does it say? Marcus handed her the phone. The message was simple, just 5 words. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Cassandra looked up. Are you going to respond? Marcus took his phone back, stared at the message for a long moment. I don't know, he said. I honestly don't know. He set the phone on his desk, face down. And for the next several hours, while the world debated who was right and who was wrong, while think pieces were written and hot takes were tweeted, while Georgia Crawford's life continued to collapse and Marcus Lawson's name became synonymous with standing up against injustice, that message sat there, unanswered, waiting, like so many things in this country. 3 days passed before Marcus finally picked up his phone and read Georgia Crawford's message again. 5 words, simple, direct, the kind of apology that could mean everything or nothing at all. I'm sorry, I was wrong. He'd thought about responding 100 times, started typing a dozen different messages, deleted them all. What was there to say? What words could possibly bridge the gap between what she'd done and what she was asking for? Cassandra found him in his office at 6 a.m. staring at the phone. Still thinking about it? Marcus didn't look up. Can't stop thinking about it. You don't owe her anything you know. Not a response, not forgiveness, not even acknowledgement. I know. Then why does it bother you so much? Marcus finally set the phone down, leaned back in his chair. Because I keep trying to figure out what I want from this. What outcome would actually make me feel like it was worth it? You stood up for yourself. You made them face consequences. That's worth something. Is it Premier Auto's stock is rebounding? They announced a new diversity initiative. Georgia Crawford is the villain. They're the reformed heroes, and in 6 months, nobody will remember any of this happened. You'll remember. Everyone who watched that video will remember. And what good does remembering do? Marcus stood up, walked to the window. I've been remembered my whole life. Every time I walk into a room, people remember that I'm black. They remember what they think that means. They remember every stereotype, every assumption, every fear they've ever been taught to associate with people who look like me. Cassandra was quiet. I wanted this to be different, Marcus continued. I wanted to believe that making an example of one person would change something. But look at the comments under those videos. Half the country thinks I'm a hero. The other half thinks I'm a bully who destroyed a woman's life over a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding. No, it wasn't. But try explaining that to people who've never experienced what it's like to be looked at and dismissed before you even open your mouth. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from his mother. "Call me when you can. Something you need to see." He called immediately. "Mom, what's going on?" "Turn on CNN, right now." Marcus grabbed the remote. The television flickered to life. A news anchor was speaking into the camera, and in the corner of the screen was a familiar face. Georgia Crawford. She was sitting in what looked like a church, surrounded by people Marcus didn't recognize. She was crying. Not the performative tears he'd seen in the dealership, but something deeper. Something broken. "What is this?" Marcus asked. "She's doing an interview. Liv. They're calling it a confession." Marcus turned up the volume. The anchor was asking questions, and Georgia was answering. Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying for days. "I don't have an excuse," Georgia was saying. "I'm not here to make excuses. I'm here because I did something terrible and I need to own it." The anchor leaned forward. "Mrs. Crawford, a lot of people are asking why. Why did you react the way you did to Mr. Lawson?" Georgia was quiet for a long moment. "Because I didn't see him as a person. I saw him as a category. A type. Something to be suspicious of." "And where did that come from?" "I've been asking myself that for 3 days." Georgia wiped her eyes. "I grew up in a small town. My father owned a business. He taught me things I thought were about being careful, being smart. But looking back, I realized what he was really teaching me was fear. Fear of people who looked different. Fear of people who didn't fit the mold. Some people would call that racism. I would have argued with you a week ago. I would have said, I'm not racist because I don't use slurs, I don't hate anyone, I treat everyone the same." Georgia's voice cracked. "But I didn't treat Marcus Lawson the same. I looked at him and saw something that wasn't there. And I acted on that, and I have to live with that for the rest of my life." Marcus watched in silence. His mother was still on the line, but neither of them spoke. "What do you want people to take away from this?" the anchor asked. "I want them to look at themselves. Really look." Georgia leaned forward. "Because I thought I was a good person. I thought I was fair. And I was wrong. And if I was wrong, maybe other people are too. Maybe there are other Georgia Crawfords out there working in showrooms and offices and schools thinking they're treating everyone equally, while they're really just sorting people into categories in their heads." "And what about Mr. Lawson? Do you have anything to say to him?" Georgia looked directly into the camera. For a moment, it felt like she was looking straight at Marcus. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know words can't undo what I did. But I need him to know that I see it now. I see what I did. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be someone different. Someone better." She paused. "And if he never forgives me, I understand. Some things shouldn't be forgiven easily. Some things need to cost something." The anchor started to ask another question, but Marcus muted the television. "Marcus." His mother's voice was soft. "You still there?" "I'm here." "What are you thinking?" Marcus watched Georgia Crawford's face on the silent screen. The tears, the exhaustion, the weight of a life that would never be the same. "I don't know what I'm thinking," he said quietly. "I don't know what I'm supposed to feel." "You're not supposed to feel anything. You feel what you feel." "She looks broken." "She is broken. You broke her." His mother's voice wasn't accusatory, just matter of fact. "The question is whether that's enough. Is it ever enough? Is there ever a point where the score is settled, where we can stop keeping track?" His mother was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know, baby. I've been asking that question my whole life. Your grandfather asked it too. I think maybe it's the wrong question." "Then what's the right one? Maybe it's not about settling scores. Maybe it's about what happens next, what you do with the power you have, what kind of world you want to build. Marcus looked at his phone, at the text message still sitting there unanswered. "I need to think about this." "Take your time. There's no rush." He hung up, sat back down at his desk, and for the next several hours while the world continued to debate and discuss and dissect what had happened, Marcus Lawson sat alone with his thoughts. The interview changed everything, not immediately, not dramatically, but in small ways that accumulated over the following weeks. Georgia Crawford became something she never expected to be: a spokesperson for uncomfortable conversations about bias. The church where she'd given the interview invited her back to speak to their congregation. Then another church invited her. Then a community center. Then a high school. She didn't charge for appearances, didn't seek publicity, just showed up wherever she was asked and told her story. The same story over and over, with all the ugly details intact. "I'm not here to be forgiven," she would say at the beginning of each talk. "I'm here to be an example of what happens when you don't examine the assumptions you carry, of what it costs when you let fear make your decisions for you." The responses were mixed. Some people embraced her message. Others called her a fraud, a performative penitent seeking redemption she didn't deserve. The internet remained divided, as the internet always does. But something was shifting. Slowly, imperceptibly. In break rooms and boardrooms and living rooms across the country, people were having conversations they'd been avoiding for years, about who they assumed was a criminal, about who they assumed was qualified, about the split-second judgments that shaped everything without anyone acknowledging they were happening. Tom Crawford stayed. Not because he'd forgiven his wife he wasn't sure he had, but because he believed in the possibility of change. Because he wanted to see who Georgia would become once she stopped being who she'd been. Their kids struggled. Friends at school asked questions. Some were cruel, some were curious, but Georgia sat them down, looked them in the eyes, and told them the truth. "I did something wrong, something I'm deeply ashamed of, and I'm trying to make it right. That's all any of us can do when we mess up. Own it, learn from it, do better." Her daughter, 16 years old and already more perceptive than Georgia had been at twice her age, asked the question that no one else had. "But Mom, why did you think that way in the first place? Like, where did it come from?" Georgia didn't have a simple answer. There was no single moment, no clear origin point, just a lifetime of small messages absorbed without examination. A word here, a warning there. A pattern of assumptions that built up like plaque in an artery, invisible until it caused a heart attack. "I don't know exactly," she told her daughter. "But I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm trying to make sure you don't inherit the same blindness." Meanwhile, Marcus Lawson was facing his own reckoning. The story had made him a symbol, a hero to millions who saw in his actions the stand they wished they could take. A villain to others who thought he'd gone too far, destroyed too much, demanded too high a price for a momentary lapse in judgment. He'd given interviews, made statements, used his platform to talk about bias and discrimination and the everyday indignities that Black Americans faced in spaces that were supposedly integrated. But through it all, there was something missing, something unfinished. The text message. It sat in his phone like an unexploded bomb. Every day he looked at it. Every day, he put the phone back down. Then, 6 weeks after the incident, something unexpected happened. His assistant informed him that he had a visitor. Someone who didn't have an appointment, but was refusing to leave until he agreed to see them. "Who is it?" "She says her name is Trenton Williams. She says you'll know who she is." Marcus didn't recognize the name, but something about it nagged at him. He told his assistant to send the visitor up. The woman who walked into his office was young, mid-20s, nervous. She was clutching a manila envelope like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "Mr. Lawson, I'm sorry to bother you. I know you're busy, but I needed to talk to you about what happened at the dealership." Marcus studied her face. Then it clicked. "Trenton, you were there. You were one of the salespeople. Yes, sir. I tried to stop it. I tried to tell Georgia to just run the card, but she wouldn't listen. I remember. Trenton sat down without being invited. Her hands were shaking. I've been thinking about that day ever since it happened, about what I could have done differently, about why I didn't do more. You spoke up. That's more than most people did. But I didn't really fight for it. I could have insisted. I could have gone over her head. I could have run the card myself. Trenton shook her head. But I was afraid of making a scene, afraid of getting in trouble, afraid of being the one who caused problems. That's human. It's not enough. Trenton met his eyes. You don't know this, but I'm half black. My mother is black, my father is white. I pass for white most of the time. People don't usually see it unless they're looking. Marcus was quiet. Growing up, I learned to stay quiet, to not rock the boat, to let things slide because confrontation was scary and people didn't usually mean harm. Trenton's voice cracked. But watching what happened to you, watching Georgia laugh at you, watching the whole thing unfold while I just stood there. She opened the manila envelope, pulled out a stack of papers. After you left, I started documenting every incident I could remember, every time I'd seen a customer treated differently because of how they looked, every time Georgia or someone else made assumptions. She slid the papers across the desk. It goes back years, Mr. Lawson, years of patterns, years of bias that everyone just accepted as normal. Marcus picked up the papers, started reading. His expression darkened with each page. Why are you showing me this? Because you have the power to do something about it. You have the platform, the resources, the credibility. Trenton leaned forward. I know you canceled the contract. I know Premier Auto is scrambling. But other dealerships do the same thing. Other industries, other companies. This isn't just about one woman who made one mistake. It's about a whole system that teaches people like Georgia that customers like you don't deserve respect. Marcus set the papers down, looked at Trenton for a long moment. What do you want me to do? I don't know exactly. I'm not a business person. I'm not an activist. I'm just someone who saw something wrong and finally decided to stop being quiet about it. Trenton stood up. You asked what I want. I want what happened to you to mean something. Not just another news cycle. Not just another hashtag. Something real. Something lasting. She walked to the door, paused. And for what it's worth, Mr. Lawson, I'm sorry I didn't do more. I'm sorry I let fear make me small. I'm going to try to be braver from now on. She left. Marcus sat alone with the papers she'd brought, reading through years of documented discrimination, patterns that had been hiding in plain sight. And slowly, an idea began to form. 8 months later, Marcus Lawson stood at a podium in front of 300 journalists, business leaders, and civil rights advocates. Behind him was a banner that read, "The Lawson Initiative, Rebuilding Trust in Consumer Spaces." Good morning, he began. 8 months ago, I walked into a car dealership trying to give them $2 billion of my company's business. Instead, I got laughed at, called a scammer, and threatened with security. The video of that incident has been viewed over 400 million times. It sparked a national conversation about bias, about respect, about who we assume belongs in certain spaces and who we assume doesn't. He paused, looked out at the crowd. But conversations only matter if they lead to change, and change only happens if someone is willing to invest in making it happen. He clicked a button. The banner behind him changed to show a series of statistics and program descriptions. Today, I'm announcing the Lawson Initiative, a $100 million commitment to addressing systemic bias in consumer-facing industries. This initiative will fund research into discriminatory patterns. It will develop training programs that go beyond checking boxes and actually change behavior. It will create accountability mechanisms that give customers recourse when they're mistreated. And it will establish partnerships with companies that commit to measurable improvement in how they serve all customers, regardless of race, gender, age, or appearance. The room erupted in questions. Marcus raised his hand for quiet. I know some of you are going to ask about Georgia Crawford, about whether this initiative is revenge or redemption or something in between. So let me be clear. He took a breath. Georgia Crawford made a mistake that cost her everything. I've watched her spend the last 8 months trying to atone for it, speaking at churches and schools, submitting herself to public scrutiny over and over again, trying to become someone different than the person she was in that showroom. He paused. I don't know if she's succeeded. I don't know if change like that is even possible, or if it's just performance designed to rehabilitate a damaged reputation. What I do know is that she's trying, and that's more than most people ever do. Marcus looked directly into the cameras. This initiative isn't about her. It's not about me either. It's about the millions of people who experience what I experienced and don't have the resources to fight back. It's about the customer service workers who see bias happening and don't feel safe speaking up. It's about building a world where what happened to me becomes unthinkable. Not because people are afraid of getting caught, but because they've actually changed how they see each other. He stepped back from the podium. Thank you. I'll take questions now. The questions lasted for 2 hours. Marcus answered them all, honestly, directly, without flinching. When it was over, he walked off the stage and found Cassandra waiting for him in the wings. That was incredible, she said. The coverage is going to be massive. Coverage doesn't matter. Results matter. They'll come. This is a good start. Marcus nodded, pulled out his phone, looked at the message that had been sitting there for 8 months. I'm sorry, I was wrong. He started typing. For the first time, he didn't delete what he wrote. I know. I believe you. Now prove it. He hit send. 3,000 miles away, in a small church basement in Tennessee, where she was preparing for another talk, Georgia Crawford felt her phone buzz. She looked at the message, read it 3 times, felt tears streaming down her face. Not tears of relief, not tears of forgiveness, but tears of something she hadn't felt in 8 months. Hope. The knowledge that maybe, just maybe, the worst thing she'd ever done could become the foundation for the best thing she'd ever be. She wiped her eyes, took a deep breath, walked out to face her audience, and began telling her story one more time. Not because she deserved absolution, but because somewhere out there in the crowd of faces looking up at her, there might be another Georgia Crawford, someone carrying assumptions they'd never examined. Someone who might laugh at the wrong person someday. Someone who still had time to change. That night, Marcus Lawson drove past the Premier Auto Group dealership for the first time since the incident. The sign was still there. The showroom was still gleaming. Cars still sat on rotating platforms, spotlit and polished. But something was different now. In the window alongside advertisements for the latest models and financing specials was a small plaque. Marcus slowed down to read it. Premier Auto Group is proud to partner with the Lawson Initiative. We are committed to treating every customer with dignity and respect, regardless of who they are or what they look like. Because everyone deserves to be seen. Marcus sat there for a long moment, looking at the plaque, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The laugh. The card sliding across the desk. The phone call to Cassandra. The contracts torn in half. The videos and the headlines and the interviews and the outrage. 8 months of pain and reflection and slow grinding change. And now this, a plaque in a window, $100 million initiative, a conversation that wouldn't stop. Was it enough? No. It would never be enough. But it was a start. Marcus pulled away from the dealership and drove into the Texas night. Behind him, the showroom lights flickered against the darkness. Ahead of him, the road stretched toward a future that was still being written. Some mistakes cost careers. Some mistakes cost millions. This one cost billions. But in the end, what it built was priceless. Because the most expensive laugh in corporate history didn't just destroy a partnership. It sparked a movement. It changed a woman who thought she knew herself, It forced a nation to look in the mirror. And it proved once and for all that the cost of disrespect is always higher than people think. Not everyone will learn that lesson in time, but for those who do, there's still hope. There's always hope. As long as one person is willing to stand up and say, "I see you. I hear you. You matter." That's where change begins. That's where the future starts. And that's why Marcus Lawson drove home that night with something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not anger, not vindication, not even satisfaction. Just peace. The quiet, hard-earned peace of a man who had demanded respect, received it, and used it to build something that would outlast them all. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for permission to be treated like human beings. Marcus Lawson stopped waiting. And that made all the difference.